I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a safe bet that I should do something positive about Disney after my Enchanted review. So let's talk about the villains. Along with your heroes, princesses, talking animals, etc., the villains serve as the opposite side of the spectrum. Disregarding morals and positive messages the movie portrays, the villains can serve as interesting characters like Frollo or Maleficent, Malevolent, however you pronounce her name. But let's look at the opposite side of the spectrum, because the Disney universe has its share of nefarious goofballs. Either they can't get anything right, or they're so evil it's hilariously over the top. Yeah, let's talk about them in this countdown of my favorite laughable animated Disney villains. Now when I say laughable, I don't mean that they're not threatening. They can go about with their plans, but go about it in such a silly manner. Now with a list of 5, it's possible that I'm going to miss a couple. Personally, there are Disney films I watch more than others, and this is based on the villains upon my personal exposure to them. I remember Captain Hook being pretty goofy, but I haven't seen that film in ages. So with that said, let's find out what I think are the silliest Disney villains. The top 5 specifically. Coming at number 5 is Ratigan. Let's start the list with a villain I feel pretty threatening, but so much that I rank him a little lower than the rest. Countless times he captures our heroes and puts them in pretty insane scenarios, and this Sherlock Holmes retelling with mice, as Arthur Conan Doyle always intended. Ratigan is to Basil what Moriarty was to Holmes. He's cunning, calculating, and serves as the crowned prince of crime. However, he has an inferiority complex. Once someone reminds him that he's a sewer rat, he gets cartoonishly mad and even has a pet cat take out the accuser.
Even meaner, you made it. Worse than the widows and orphans you drown. Worse than the widows and orphans you drown.
So with a villain that's actually pretty competent, what makes him silly? 2 words. Vincent Price. Price has had a career of playing mad doctors and geniuses. He talks about all those qualities and gives it to Ratigan, almost playing a parody of himself. Like, I know that Vincent Price can be over the top, but he really dials it up, and it always brings a smile to my face. Ratigan, because he loves to be nasty. Coming at number 4 is Hades. Much like Ratigan, you have a voice actor who's pretty much playing himself. That's what James Woods does and it works well. In most Greek myths, or just myths in general, there's an act of making a deal. Having a sleazy car salesman as your villain works really well and fits with the tone of gods amongst mortals. That, and I always love his delivery. There are times where he can be threatening, but others where his temper gets the best of him. What I find ironic is how Hades is in the movie doesn't fit the actual god, whereas he's made of flames when in actuality the underworld, as the Greeks believed, didn't have that much fire. He also had himself a pair much like Jasper and Horace called Pain and Paddock that I always believed were the physical embodiments of those feelings released by Pandora's box. Except they're so silly, I'm pretty sure Pandora would have cared less. I guess on a separate note, I found this movie to be an interesting introduction at a young age to Greek mythology, as well as the artwork by Scarfe, who was the production designer, which is a first for most Disney films since they try to keep it in-house. Guess I don't have much to say about Hades other than not getting on his bad side.
I got it. I got the concept.
At number 3, I got Yzma and Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. Yeah, this pretty much sets the record straight as goofy villains so much that they seem more like a comedic duo versus nefarious baddies. Yzma is a straight man and Kronk is our hapless but kind-hearted goofball. While she makes it her goal to rule the kingdom and exact her revenge against the Emperor, Kronk is just there along for the ride, never addressing why she has to put up with him. Then again, where else would he go? The movie Emperor's New Groove and its conflict revolved around their mess-up, confusing a death potion with a llama potion. Seriously, I can't make this crap up. That may mess stuff up, but there's no denying that they make the movie work. It's almost strange that of all the Disney villains, they resemble the Looney Tunes the closest. Now I know I may as well address that this character was supposed to be more threatening when the movie was originally going to be called Kingdom of the Sun. However, with the way the production ended up going, they ditched the original animator, the character motivations, but managed to keep the same actress. Which works out in the end considering that the voice of the original Catwoman. Now that's funny, this list has 2 Adam West Batman villains.
It's brilliant, 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 I tell you.
With Kronk, you couldn't find any more of a traditional meathead than Patrick Warburton. Yzma and Kronk? More like Abbott and Costello. For number 2, I got Prince John from Robin Hood. I actually find that Robin Hood gets a lot of flack. I wouldn't blame most people at first, since the movie came out when the studio was churning out the typical duds. However, I don't feel that this movie deserves this sort of credibility. It managed to tell a genuinely likable version of the classic tale with enough action to hold me through. Maybe I find myself liking the simplicity of it right down to the recycled animation from the Jungle Book. That or was the fact that the theme was similar to that of the hamster dance. Ironically, when you had most characters like Little John and Hiss practically copied and pasted from the Jungle Book, the character we'd like to see like Shere Khan makes a transition as well, right? No, we get this schmuck for a jungle cat instead.
Oh, the richest plum of them all, Notting Ham.
He pretty much becomes the staple of a cartoony villain, right down to his curly mustache, his piles of money, and hiding behind his useless sheriff. Yeah, Prince John is such a loser, he makes this guy look intimidating.
He throws an angry tantrum if he cannot have his way.
It only makes it funny when he complains about his constant mommy issues and the fact that King Richard of the Crusades is more of a likable ruler than him. I would also include Hiss, since their dynamic works as the typical comedy duo, but I managed to find Prince John sillier on his own. What more can I say? He's a tyrant, a coward, and a wimp, all wrapped in one. So now that you heard my 4 selections, now it's time to reveal who I think is the silliest Disney villain, and to be fair, I think it's going to surprise you.
Why, yours, Ebenezer. The richest man in the cemetery.
Yeah, this doesn't seem likely, since he's never really been featured in any of the movies. But when you get down to it, he's been establishing the rules most of the other entries follow. Does he manage to be less intimidating and more vulnerable to his own faults? Or how about letting his emotions take over, causing him to fail on his own? All this, and over 75 years of experience doing so. Right when there was a Mickey Mouse, Peg Leg was right over him, making our hero the reluctant underdog, showing that size doesn't really matter when you have rocks in your head. I especially like the current Pete, that Jim Cummings voice. Then again, how do you dislike anything Jim Cummings voices? Who keeps a tradition going of constant failure and scheming. I think the only exception, and it isn't so much an exception since it's still silly, was in Mickey's Christmas Carol. Up until the reveal of him being the ghost of Christmas future, he was playing up the creepy and atmospheric scares that the character usually brings. Then all of a sudden, when he pulls over his hood to reveal that silly grin, I may have chuckled a little, no joke. Yeah, even with the flames of hell and Scrooge McDuck begging for his life, he couldn't change the fact that I still find his character to be an unsubtle bad guy archetype. Yeah, he may be fairly underrated, but Pete sets the record straight for the traditional Disney villain goofballs.
Sometimes I'm so rotten I give me goosebumps.
So now the floor is yours. Tell me if there's a villain that I should have included on my list, and I'll consider it maybe for another future countdown, possibly in the future. Now I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P, and thanks for watching this episode of the Cartoon Palooza.